West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
All right, just a short time ago, President Biden commemorated the 58th anniversary of Bloody Sunday by walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where back in 1965, state troopers clubbed, tear gassed, and sicked dogs upon peaceful protesters marching against anti-black demonstration. It was a solemn visit, but a crucial one, especially given Biden's vocal commitment to black voters, who played a large role in getting him to the White House in 2020. Now, juxtapose that moment with how congressional Republicans exercised their power just this week, and you really have a perfect distillation of current American politics. Consider in particular how the House Oversight Committee is gearing up for what critics are calling Benghazi 2.0, a rash of investigations into far-right fever dreams that are designed to attack the president and serve nothing more than the red meat and the GOP base. Don't get me wrong, not exactly shocked by all of this, but I am disappointed because Kevin McCarthy didn't tap far-right firebrands like Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz to chair the Oversight Committee. No, he didn't pick those guys. He handpicked Kentucky Congressman James Comer. This is a guy, a purported bipartisan backslapper, a so-called adult in the room. Those were the phrases that the media used to describe Representative Comer. And since he is not as loud or perhaps as brash as Jordan or Gaetz, he's often been flying under the radar since he took over the chairmanship. But we've been keeping an eye on James Comer, and we need to dispel this notion of who he is. He is just as radical, just as far-right, just as conspiracy-driven as the other louder House Republican figures. Just this week, Comer decried the fact that he'd missed his chance to see President Biden's son, Beau, a U.S. veteran who died of brain cancer, be prosecuted and thrown in prison. Despicable sentiments from an alleged adult in the room. Last month, Comer basically suggested that the Chinese surveillance balloon was carrying a, quote, Wuhan bioweapon. He said he was going to threaten TV service provider DirecTV with an authoritarian ultimatum if they didn't add back his favorite propaganda outlet, Newsmax, to their lineup. And he has repeatedly called for not just the FBI, not just the Justice Department, but for border security coffers to be defunded and dismantled. Forget about a wolf. James Comer is a grenade launcher. He is such in sheep's clothing. Let's be clear about that. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Greg Hazar of Texas. He is a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I want to get your general thoughts on this new chairman of the House Oversight Committee, because as we just outlined there, he's somebody who's kind of been flying below the radar. He's not as bombastic, perhaps, in front of the cameras as a Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz. But what's your take?
So first of all, thanks so much for having me on, and I hope you don't grill me as hard as you just grilled Mehdi here about DC Comics a moment ago. But what is so tragic to me is the Committee on House Oversight used to be chaired in the past by legendary chairman who could be nonpartisan, but ultimately held fraudsters and grifters and enemies of democracy to account. People like Jack Brooks from Texas, who helped drive down the cost of government services when corporate monopolies were gobbling up all the government contracts, held folks like Richard Nixon accountable for Watergate. We used to be able to have a committee that stood up for the little guy instead of stepped on the little guy, that uncovered the truth instead of obscured the truth. But what we have been seeing in committee has really been a smokescreen of right-wing conspiracy theories that only serves the larger corporate interests that are behind the modern-day GOP. I'll give just one example. Chairman Comer recently opened up an investigation into the horrific derailment of the train in East Palestine, which we should investigate that. But his investigation only included the administration. They should be included in those questions. But when we asked that Norfolk Southern also be investigated, the company that ultimately is responsible, that they be investigated, we hear crickets. And I think that's what's emblematic of this right-wing fear-mongering as a smokescreen, ultimately for the corporate interests that the modern-day GOP serves.
Let me get your reaction to something Comer said, Chairman Comer, specifically his vile remarks about Beau Biden. Do you fear that the committee will become just one big political hit job on President Biden ahead of the 2024 elections? I mean, this is the same playbook of the Benghazi committee when it was Kevin McCarthy running the show.
We're already seeing that every single week in the Oversight Committee. And what's tragic about it is there are American people suffering right now. There's real issues that we see all across the country. In Texas, people's reproductive rights being taken away, workers' rights being taken away, folks not sure if their kids are going to be safe in school from gunmen. And instead, what we have is powerful committee that is supposed to be able to hold the government accountable, hold big corporations accountable, being weaponized about a political campaign, the presidential race. It's like when in Texas, 53 people were found dead, immigrants coming to this country trying to find a better life. Women, kids as young as 13 years old, scorched to death in the back of a tractor trailer because they were hiding to try to come to this country for safe haven. And Greg Abbott, our governor, his public statement was not sadness or remorse or wishing health for the few people that survived. No, it was these deaths are on Biden. And that's what we're continuing to see with Chairman Comer, trying to find any issue that he can point at President Biden about instead of turning our view towards the American people and how it is that we can serve them. And it's really a disgrace.
Talk to me about how Democrats are planning or can push back on the agenda of the Oversight Committee under the Republican leadership.
We can't fall into the trap of just trying to be the defense counsel for the administration. Instead, we have to be the defense counsel for the truth, because I think we have to get the majority of the American people to believe that these committee hearings aren't just a partisan game, but that there's actually elected officials that are looking out for them. And so, for example, when we had that committee hearing on immigration, and there were so many of the folks on Jim Comer's side of the aisle talking about saying that undocumented immigrants were the folks bringing fentanyl into the country and other invasion conspiracy theories, all entirely not based on truth or based on reality. It's really important for us to fight back with the truth, to talk about how we need to address what's happening in our country with overdose deaths, talk about the public health crisis in our country, come up with real solutions on helping asylum seekers be able to be a part of this country and to stabilize countries abroad. I think we need to put out a truly positive agenda so that voters have a real choice between right-wing conspiracy theories that serve corporate masters or people who believe that our real masters are the American people.
Let me ask you about your colleagues in the Republican Party in your home state of Texas. You talked about that briefly a moment ago. They moved to formally censure one of your fellow Texas Republican Congressman, Tony Gonzalez, over his votes supporting gun control legislation and same-sex marriage. Your reaction to what is happening in your home state with this Republican Party?
Texas, when I think of Texas, I don't think of Greg Abbott. I don't think of the right-wing extremists that are against things like same-sex marriage or gun safety. I think of folks like Sarah Weddington, the 20-something-year-old lawyer who won Roe v. Wade and brought abortion rights to this country. That was not so long ago. That was a case won in Texas. I think of the Voting Rights Act, which President Biden just went and celebrated as he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge today. That was signed into law by a Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Certainly not a perfect president, but somebody who signed not just the Voting Rights Act, but also the Civil Rights Act, also the Fair Housing Act, who also brought us Medicaid and Head Start. My state is a state where the majority of people believe in something much different than the current existing ruling regime. And I believe that what we need to be able to do is to organize that majority back to our progressive roots.
It is Monday, the 6th of March of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh, yes, that's what we do after the weekend. So, how are you? It wasn't such a bad weekend. The end of CPAC has occurred, so that's good. Something good there. We still had to put up with the last throes of it. Apparently, Donald Trump, some outlets are saying that he took it over. He took it over like a storm. I guess so. Maybe. Also heard that he won the straw poll to be the leading candidate for the GOP and CPAC attendees. And I got to tell you, there weren't very many of them, and at least 75 were paid actors. They advertised for them even. So, I don't know. What do you do? There weren't very many people there. Anyway, he does appeal to a virulent, toxic minority of voters. And apparently also they have an outsized voice, but because, boy, do people go to heel. On the other hand, I don't know. Are they really being intimidated? Was Walgreens really intimidated to keep from selling the abortion pill, even in states where abortion is legal? No, they weren't intimidated into doing it. They're behind it. God, as if, they haven't ever put money towards anti-abortion groups. Jeez, they big-time bucks. It's all part of a pattern. Some might even call it a strategy. So, we got our work cut out for us. I mean, you got that guy Comer, as mentioned at the top by Iman. That, hey, it is, this guy is just, I don't know. They got him, don't they? They talk about Fetterman not being suitable, not having the mental capacity to serve as a representative of his state, the people who voted him in. And yet, you got people like Comer. You had what's up with Texas? I mean, my God, you think of the people coming out of Texas, even Cornyn. Oh, Cornyn's like, he's okay. Yeah, right. Oh, well. So, are people over the Murdaugh trial yet? Murdaugh trial? Are they? I hope so. Do you think that maybe there was an outsized coverage of that particular trial? I do. I don't know. Maybe people need these courtroom dramas. I suppose. Last big one I remember like this was OJ. Yeah, I guess you could count some of the salacious, girlfriends who killed their boyfriends because they're abusive, and then, I don't know, cut them up and left them in the desert or something, just because. So, we did have those kind, but this one, I don't know. Maybe it's something that we needed to see, because this guy's certainly part of that old boy network of right-wing white types in states that just lock down everything. And here's a scion of a longtime family or a family that had been longtime members of the Old Boys Club. Not just members, leaders of it. Drivers. So, they always have the cotillion ball right there at the Murdochs. Yeah. Okay. They live differently in, I don't know, flyover country, don't they? I don't think he comes from flyover country, but people like to say they do. Oh, he's the salt of the earth. No, he's not. And I don't know, maybe generational wealth like that makes people into criminals. It sure seems like, I don't know, maybe we're just hearing more about it, and it's always been that way, or is it, are these some kind of new phenomena? Maybe. Oh, another derailing in Ohio by Norfolk Southern. Yeah, the same company that had the one there in Palestine. Everything turns into a Mel Brooks comedy around here when we deal with that. Anyway, yeah, another derailment, and the company says, don't worry, it's just like methane and some ammonia. No prob. We got it under control. No danger. Yeah, right. But they also want to burn off oil from it. What? What is their deal about wanting to flare out all the stuff that they throw onto the ground like that's going to take care of it? Jesus, is this company run by arsons? I think so. And of course, as we heard at the top there, Comer's not investigating that. We're going to investigate Biden's response to it. And yet, they're not investigating Biden's response to it because, I really think that the reason that they keep saying that no one showed up to help us is because the head of the EPA is black. I think they just don't realize that the feds are there because a black guy's there. It's just a black guy. I know he showed up for some reason. We don't know what he's doing here. You know how they are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have some sort of obsessive preponderance to bring race up all the time, don't we? That's what they keep saying. No, it's not that they are racist. It's just that we keep bringing it up. Saw a tweet by some leading Catholic writer who said that Spielberg whining about the rise of anti-Semitism doesn't take into account about how badly behaved Jews have been recently. What? And he says, but look, it's sort of like that old argument of, I became an anti-Semite because you kept calling me it. I had to respond. Okay. All right. You're still a bigot, anti-Semite. Oh, my God. It's just they are out and out in the front of it right now. We're looking at late 1920s, early 1930s Nazi Germany. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, and this kid that came out and said we're going to eradicate transgenderism. And, people rightfully said, well, that's genocide. Now they're dissembling. Of course, they go, well, we said ism. Well, they wanted to eradicate Judaism also. And then they went after the people. Here come the boxcars. Yeah, I'm telling you. I hear them rattling right now. And maybe Norfolk Southern will be part of that. Because if their trains derail, who cares? Just a bunch of those people. Yeah, enemies of the state. What were they enemies of? Well, yeah, the guy read a newspaper. Get him out of here. Okay. All right. Oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to designate Antifa as a terror organization. And I'm trying to think, okay, so you're saying that all of America and because we're Antifa, we're anti-fascist. There's no such thing as a political group called Antifa. And also by law, you can't really call a domestic group, terror organization by law, but she doesn't care. She's going to do what she wants to do. She was like, I don't know, a suburban house. She was a suburban housewife. Yeah, I happen to own a gym that her dad bought for her because, they're rich. Another part of that old boys club down there. They don't have to be exalted and very smart. Of course, I don't know. I saw that Murdoch guy. I don't know. Once again, generational wealth doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to rise to the top of whatever it was that was laid down as the legacy. Yeah, we're all lawyers, and we're good ones, too. All right. I guess if you cheat. But yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She comes from the landed gentry, at least. So, yeah, she was just a suburban housewife sitting around, coffee clatches with the gals, and then decided, I'm going to turn my, my phone around and start pontificating into my phone. Why not? Next thing you know, she's harassing survivors of school shootings. How dare you want to take my gun away just because you survived a shooting? Jeez, lady. And now she wants civility. We still haven't seen any recording, nothing from her purported run-in with a crazy woman and her adult son who dropped the F-bombs. You would think that in today's new agogo society, somebody somewhere would have turned on a phone during that tete-a-tete. You would think. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that it didn't happen because that's a double negative, which means it did. See? That is how the world works, and that's the physics of it. So there we go. Well, why don't we give you a rundown about what we have in store for you? We can only ramble for so long, and then we decide, hey, in the royal we, which means me, get it on. You're kind of rambling there, buddy. Okay, here we go. All right, starting off in the Bistro Cafe. The EPA has mandated the state's report on cybersecurity threats to its water systems. We've heard that a little bit before, haven't we? Yes, we have. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs won't proceed with an execution set by the state Supreme Court. And the Interior Department will work to restore more large bison herds to Native American lands. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a crisis over poisonings that are targeting Iranian schoolgirls escalated as authorities acknowledged. Over 50 schools were struck. And Hong Kong police stopped activists from joining a women's march. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored, of course, by Kelly Lincoln. And Kelly is quite busy and also getting ready for the upcoming Netroots Nation, I believe in Chicago this year. I fear I may not be going once again. My elderly father is quite elderly, of course, so that might preclude me wanting to go too far, since I'm far enough away as it is. But thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. If you would look across the page to the left from that chat room link there, that's near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice the link to our Patreon page. And thank you to those of you who have recently become recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio. Your recurring patronage really does help us. And as you know, we pool your recurring patronage funds with others, and that helps us pay our bills. And how might one do that? Well, if you could afford to spend what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, and send those funds to us instead once a month, buy us a coffee once a month. We are then able to, once again, pool those together and put that with what we pull out of our own wallets, and we're able to pay our bills and fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance that has been resisting for quite a few years. Quite a few. So thank you for your patronage, and it has really, really, really helped. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those, and we thank Tom for doing so. Follow me on those as well, Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And that, of course, is where you can link up to the actual articles in which we are deriving such mirth. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do that by following at Cookbook West. And please, please, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is out of the Associated Press by Suman Neshadam. The Biden administration on Friday said it would require states to report on cybersecurity threats in their audits of public water systems a day after it released a broader plan to protect critical infrastructure against cyber attacks. The Environmental Protection Agency said public water systems are increasingly at risk from cyber attacks that amount to a threat to public health. Cyber attacks against critical infrastructure facilities, including drinking water systems, are increasing, and public water systems are vulnerable, said EPA Assistant Administrator Radhika Fox. Cyber attacks have the potential to contaminate drinking water. Fox said the EPA would assist states and water systems in building out cybersecurity programs, adding that states could begin using EPA's guidance in their audits right away. The agency did not respond immediately to questions about enforcement deadlines. EPA said it would help states and water systems with technical know-how. The announcement made no mention of new financial assistance. Biden administration officials said recent surveys show that states are inconsistent in their efforts to protect drinking water systems from cyber attacks, mainly on the operational technology used for safe drinking water. The EPA also said many water systems do not have cybersecurity practices and that voluntary measures have yielded minimal progress. Experts have said many municipalities lack the money and expertise. For instance, in 2021, a hacker's failed attempt to poison the water supply of a small Florida city near Tampa raised alarms about the vulnerability of the nation's 151,000 public water systems. Local officials said the intruder used a remote access program to increase the sodium hydroxide, which is used to lower acidity, but a burn risk in high concentrations. And they were going to add that to the water by a factor of 100. A supervisor monitoring a plant console caught the activity and stopped it. Some experts question whether EPA's approach would be effective. Mark Hamilton, former security chief for the city of Seattle, said performing such assessments would be hard to do at scale across water utilities, which vary greatly in size and resources across the country. And Tracy Meehan, executive director of government affairs at the American Water Works Association, said the plan puts states in a tough position by saying that such reporting should start immediately. The American Water Works Association said training for states on cybersecurity risks was still ongoing. EPA's memo came a day after the White House released a wide-ranging cybersecurity plan to counter rising threats to government agencies, private industry, schools, hospitals, and other key infrastructure that are often breached. The plan also included measures to hold software companies responsible when their products fail to meet certain standards. Jacques Milieu of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs vowed on Friday that her administration won't carry out an execution, even though the state Supreme Court scheduled it over the objections of the state's new Attorney General. The Democratic governor's promise not to execute Aaron Gunches on April 6 for his murder conviction in a 2002 killing came a day after the state Supreme Court said it must grant an execution warrant if appellate proceedings have concluded, and that those requirements were met in Gunches' case. Last week, Hobbs appointed retired U.S. Magistrate Judge David Duncan to examine the state's procurement of lethal injection drugs and other death penalty protocols due to the state's history of mismanaging executions. Under my administration, an execution will not occur until the people of Arizona can have the confidence that the state is not violating the law in carrying out the gravest of penalties, Hobbs said in a statement. Attorney General Chris May's office has said it won't seek court orders to carry out executions until Hobbs' review is underway. Mays, who took office in January, tried to withdraw a request by her Republican predecessor, Mark Brnovich, for a warrant to Gunches. The court declined to withdraw the request on Thursday last. The court said Hobbs' review does not constitute good cause for refraining from issuing the warrant. May's office declined to comment on Hobbs' promise not to carry out the execution next month. Hobbs maintained that while the court authorized Gunches' execution, its order does not require the state to carry it out. Dale Bache, a former federal public defender who teaches death penalty law at Arizona State University, said Hobbs can use her authority as the state's chief executive when the state believes it cannot carry out an execution in a constitutional acceptable manner. What the governor did is not unique, he said, who applauded Hobbs' move. Governors in Alabama, Ohio, and Tennessee recently used their authority to pause executions because they had serious questions about the protocols in their states. Matthew Brown of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. U.S. officials will work to restore more large bison herds to Native American lands under an order from Interior Secretary Deb Haaland that calls for the government to tap into indigenous knowledge in its efforts to conserve the burly animals that are an icon of the American West. Haaland also announced $25 million in federal spending for bison conservation. The money from last year's climate bill will build new herds, transfer more bison from federal to tribal lands, and forge new bison management agreements with tribes, officials said. American bison, also known as buffalo, have bounced back from their near extinction due to commercial hunting in the 1800s, but they remain absent from most of the grasslands they once occupied, and many tribes have struggled to restore their deep historical connections to the animals. As many as 60 million bison once roamed North America, moving in vast herds that were central to the culture and survival of numerous Native American groups. They were driven to the brink of extinction more than a century ago when hunters, U.S. troops, and tourists shot them by the thousands to feed a growing commercial market that used bison parts and machinery, fertilizer, and clothing. By 1889, only a few hundred bison remained. Holland, a Laguna Pueblo in New Mexico, is the first Native American to serve as a U.S. Cabinet Secretary. She's championed tribal concerns on issues ranging from wildlife conservation to energy development and put a spotlight on past mistreatment of Native Americans through a series of listening sessions about systemic abuses at government-run boarding schools. She told the AP in an interview last year that the decimation of bison by European settlers eliminated the primary food source for many tribes and opened the way for their land to be taken away. The return of bison in some locations is considered a conservation success, but Holland said they remain functionally extinct, and more work is needed to return the animals to tribal lands and restore the grasslands they depend on. Well, it's baby steps, but it's steps nonetheless. Why don't we now step into our break? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Big and High. The last time you saw a bear full of coke, it was probably a teddy stuffed with it on a bad 70s TV cop show. But in fact, in the 1980s, a real bear in the Georgia mountains fatally ingested a large quantity of coke, which had been tossed out of an airplane by a smuggler. Later, the creature was stuffed and ultimately purchased by country music icon Waylon Jennings. So there's a movie in there somewhere, right? You betcha, especially if the little black bear is now an enraged 700-pound grizzly, bungling drug dealers are combing the wilderness for their goods, and hapless forest rangers and local residents are stumbling into the action. From director Elizabeth Banks, we get Cocaine Bear, which was a meme before opening in its first theater, and which lives up to the hype. It's gory, think numerous creature features, or maybe Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, but with lots of humor. From one-liners to silly gags and sequences, like one especially uproarious and well-choreographed one with the bear chasing an ambulance. A movie like this promises humor after the fact, too, if you read reviews. Even after disclaimers about the occasional cool popcorn movie, some reviewers are still evaluating the efficacy of the subplots and snootily discounting it all because, hey, someone could have just shot the bear, right? The era, the 1980s, and the terrain, Georgia, bring to mind the absurdist TV hoot from back in the day, Dukes of Hazzard, and that's still bringing in royalties 40 years on. It's probably best here just to relax and enjoy Isaiah Whitlock, O'Shea Jackson, Margot Martindale, Ray Liotta in his last role, and others just dealing with the cocaine bear. The World Series issues will still be available for overthinking after you leave the theater. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
An unlikely team of researchers and, get this, tiger sharks has discovered the world's largest seagrass ecosystem. It's been hiding in plain sight just off the coast of the Bahamas. The results appear in Nature Communications. This is Scientific American's Science Quickly. I'm Joseph Polidoro. As ecosystems go, seagrasses are right up there with rainforests and coral reefs.
But it's actually one of the most important hubs or magnets for biodiversity.
Austin Gallagher is a marine biologist and CEO of Beneath the Waves, an ocean conservation nonprofit. Seagrasses are nurseries to a fifth of the world's largest fisheries and are shelters for thousands of species. They protect other habitats and coastlines, and they store enormous amounts of carbon that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere.
It's sort of this, incredible unsung hero of ocean conservation.
But as much as half the world's seagrass is yet to be found. We're protecting these critical ecosystems with surveys that are as accurate as an early Renaissance map of the New World. That's because unlike mangroves and warm water coral reefs, seagrass meadows aren't always picked up by satellite or airplane observation. Cloud cover and glare from the seafloor also keep the Bahamas seagrass hidden.
So there's a lot of false negatives and a lot of false positives.
Carlos Duarte is a marine ecologist at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia.
If I had tried to do it myself, probably I wouldn't have never tried.
For decades, Carlos had suspected that the Bahama banks might host an enormous seagrass habitat, but he couldn't prove it.
Remote sensing will never produce a reliable record, and then ground truthing the Bahamas banks because of the sheer size proved impossible.
By the way, ground truthing is establishing the on-the-ground truth by direct observation. For seagrass, that's usually done by divers or by researchers on a boat.
I really believe that if we had not come together like we did, this discovery might not have happened.
Then by chance, Carlos met Austin and saw footage from Austin's shark-mounted cameras.
And we saw these vast underwater seagrass meadows.
Carlos had found his ground truthers.
Tiger sharks were the total game changer of this whole process. And tiger sharks love seagrass habitat. So tiger sharks are this incredible ally.
But how do you collaborate with a large carnivorous shark?
These tiger sharks have teeth that are capable of doing serious damage. And that's not, demonizing them. That's just a fact.
For the study, Gallagher's team caught 8 tiger sharks and outfitted them with satellite tags. The researchers also attached cameras to 7 more sharks. At first,
waves crashing, it's just hectic nature, everybody's shouting, we're reeling this animal in, trying to restrain it, put a tail rope around its tail, fasten it to the side of the boat.
Once the shark is secured,
well, it's actually kind of amazing. It just kind of chills out, and it actually is quite peaceful.
In 12 minutes on average for each shark, the team took measurements, collected blood samples, and installed the recording equipment. The sharks were then released to roam the bank's seagrass meadows. The tiger sharks were much better observers than humans.
About 70 kilometers per day, 24/7.
They're also 1/5 the cost of humans or drones. By combining the shark footage and location data with thousands of boat and diver surveys, the team could correctly interpret the satellite images,
ultimately revealing the world's largest seagrass meadow up to 93,000 square kilometers.
That's about the size of Portugal and nearly 40 times the size of original estimates. The find increases known seagrasses globally by 1/3. The world's remaining undiscovered seagrass meadows will be smaller, Carlos says. To map them, Carlos will use another charismatic denizen of seagrass ecosystems, sea turtles.
So we're doing that now in the Red Sea, and then actually getting a a very reliable mapping not only of where seagrass meadows are, but the individual area that they cover.
Carlos and his colleagues will soon be exploring near the Maldives and other archipelagos and island nations in Southeast Asia. Mapping seagrasses not only helps us protect them, it may also benefit the people who live near them.
So when you look at the carbon assets that sit in the seagrass meadow and the avoided emissions that can be achieved through conservation, and then apportion them to 300,000 people.
He's referring to the population of the Bahamas, now over 350,000 people.
Basically, every Bahamian owns $1 billion on carbon credits.
The team's work also puts sharks in a new, more flattering light.
These tiger sharks led us to these seagrass meadows. We now know that this is going to be a huge benefit for people of the Bahamas moving forward. It really demonstrates that if you protect the sharks, then you could potentially protect the people.
No small accomplishment for 15 tiger sharks and their human colleagues. For Scientific American's Science Quickly, I'm Joseph Polidoro. Science Quickly is produced by Jeff Delvicio, Tulika Bose, and Kelso Harper. Subscribe to Science Quickly wherever you get your podcasts, and follow scientificamerican.com for updated and in-depth science news.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1857. That was the day the U.S. Supreme Court handed down one of its most infamous decisions. It was known as the Dred Scott case. Dred Scott had been born into slavery. He was owned by a military man named John Emerson. His military service brought Emerson from the slave state of Missouri to the free state of Illinois and then the free territory of Wisconsin. While in Wisconsin, Scott married. Emerson's career path then turned back to Missouri. A few years later, Emerson died. Scott attempted to purchase freedom for himself and his wife. When he was not successful, he took his case to the courts, claiming that his time on free soil should have granted him freedom. The Supreme Court decision was devastating for Dred Scott and for all who opposed slavery. In a 7-2 decision, the court ruled that as a black man, Scott had no claim on citizenship under the U.S. Constitution. The majority opinion left no ambiguity, saying Scott, quote, had no rights which the white man was bound to respect. But the court went even further. It ruled that the Missouri Compromise of 1820 was unconstitutional. This meant that according to the court, Congress could not move to prohibit slavery in any U.S. territories. Reaction in the North by those who supported free labor was swift and angry. The Chicago Daily Tribune declared, "It is the first step in a revolution which, if not arrested, nullifies the Revolution of '76 and makes us all slaves again." The Dred Scott decision sharpened tensions over the question of slavery and marched the nation closer to civil war. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy, with even more increasing clouds and showers arriving a little bit in a few hours, it looks like. We'll have highs in the low to mid 40s, winds light and variable, and then cloudy with snow showers developing tonight, lows in the upper 20s, winds light and variable, and we should have accumulations of around an inch. And then rain showers in the morning tomorrow will evolve into more steady rain in the afternoon. Highs in the low 40s, winds light and variable, and we're looking at about a quarter inch of rain. And then the same scenario for tomorrow night, snow overnight with maybe about an inch, and then rain again. And it looks like we will have that particular format for the next 7 days or more. Pollen is still rated as none right here in the little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 29 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is low at level 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.11 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 89%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And of course, we know that that is the Weather Underground. Well, it looks like London is 48 and mostly cloudy with a snow and freeze advisory. London. Paris is 45 degrees and cloudy. Rome is 58 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 34 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 46 and clear. Hong Kong is 65 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 48 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 72 degrees with light rain. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays.
A crisis over poisonings targeting Iranian schoolgirls escalated yesterday Sunday as authorities acknowledged over 50 schools were struck in a wave of possible cases. The poisonings have spread further fear among parents as Iran has faced months of unrest. It remains unclear who or what is responsible since the poisonings began in November in the Shiite holy city of Qom. Reports now suggest schools across 21 of Iran's 30 provinces have seen cases, with girls' schools the site of nearly all the incidents. The attacks have raised fears that other girls could be poisoned, apparently just for going to school. Education for girls has never been challenged in the more than 40 years since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Iran has been calling on the Taliban in neighboring Afghanistan to allow girls and women return to school and universities. Interior Minister Ahmad Vahidi said without elaborating that investigators recovered suspicious samples in the course of their investigations into the incidents. According to the state-run IRNA news agency, he called for calm among the public, while also accusing the enemy's media terrorism of inciting more panic over the poisonings. However, it wasn't until the poisonings received international media attention that hardline President Ebrahim Raisi announced an investigation into the incidents. On Sunday, Raisi told the cabinet, following a report by Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib, that the root of the poisonings must be uncovered and confronted. He described the attacks as a crime against humanity for creating anxiety among students and parents. Vahidi said at least 52 schools have been affected by the poisonings. Iranian news reports have put the number of schools at over 60. At least one boys' school reportedly has been affected.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Kenneth Leong of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Hong Kong pro-democracy group said the National Security Police stopped activists from joining a highly anticipated protest yesterday Sunday that was canceled at the last minute by the organizer. The League of Social Democrats said police questioned 4 of its members on Friday and warned them not to participate in the march that was planned by the Hong Kong Women Workers Association. The League of Social Democrats is very angry about being threatened and hindered by the National Security Police over joining a legal protest, but it has decided to be absent under such pressure, the group said. Police said in an email response to the AP that when they take any action, they handle it in accordance to the actual situation and the law. The planned event would have been the first major civil rights protest in 3 years approved by police, and the first after lifting the major COVID-19 restrictions, including the mask mandate. During the pandemic, major protests were rare under antivirus controls. In addition, many activists have been silenced or jailed after China's central government imposed a sweeping national security law following massive protests in 2019. On Saturday night, the Women's Association announced in a Facebook post that it had regrettably decided to call off the march that planned to call for labor and women's rights and gender equality without specifying why. It did not immediately respond to a call seeking comment. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow, though I must announce that we will be here in some form, but I will not be here at the actual time. I am assisting my sister in going for a medical procedure tomorrow quite early, so we'll have something in place, either actual show that we've recorded or something newsy for your West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy listening pleasure. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow in some form or other, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.